does a range of things, but one way of saying it is that we break into systems, which is different to a lot of the other things that were said here. We help people improve their security by actually testing the systems and then showing them what the weaknesses are, and people fix them. And one of the things that matters a lot about this is it's easier to break in than it is to defend. It's an easier job. And there's various reasons, and some of that's psychology, and some of it's knowledge. And some of it's funny when you explain it. So lots of people have seen spam. And therefore, lots of people think they know what phishing looks like. And certainly lots of people think they know what spear phishing looks like. And they're not connected. What most people have seen in spam is they've seen like medical spam, where the Canadian pharmacy type spam, which is please buy these following medical products. Interestingly, they do actually send you the medical products. I can't guarantee the quality of them, but they will send you them. Their business model for doing this is it's easier to sell to repeat customers, because repeat customers are good. Their one problem is that one thing that every government in the entire world seems to agree on is that selling off-prescription drugs is probably a bad idea, and so they all take the websites down. So the Canadian pharmacy offers a bounty to anyone who can bypass spam filters, and they've always paid out. And because they've always paid out, whenever someone works out a way of bypassing spam filters, one of the things they do is send Canadian pharmacy spam. And customers are happy. The other type of spam that most people have seen is Nigerian 419 scam. They don't pay out. It goes in the standard form of give me a little bit of money and I'll give you a lot of money. Normally these emails appear like basically you would need to be an idiot to respond to them. And therefore, people assume that people that send these things are not very smart. That's not true. It's just that whenever you think the attacker is doing something and it's stupid, as a rule, it means you probably don't understand what the attacker is doing. What the attacker is doing in this case is it's very easy and cheap for them to send large amounts of spam. It, however, uses their time and resources to respond to people when they respond to them. So what they want is people that are going to respond to them that are very, very likely to give them the money. So if they send an email that only someone who is very likely to fall for it would respond to, then they get a good hit rate. So that's, despite what's been said about training and the rest, that's the training that lots of people have actually had in reality about what does malicious email look like, because they've all received that kind of email. And so one of the things that happens is if you actually try and do some science and you start asking people, can you spot a phishing email, let alone can you spot a spear phishing? Can you spot something that's targeted? And one of the things you learn is that people are very confident. About 3% of people have a low probability that they'll be able to spot a phishing email. So that's good, we've solved the problem. The other thing happens if you ask them, would their colleagues spot a phishing email? They're less confident about their colleagues. See their numbers go up. I always like the fact that everyone thinks that they're really good at something, but other people, perhaps they're not quite as good. But you're still having relatively high levels of confidence that they'll be actually able to spot a phish. Comedy thing, we'll try this just the once to see if we can get a reaction from the room. Hands in the air if you actually tweeted once today with the hashtag. So we got a few responses. OK. So you get an email tomorrow. Email says this. Appears to have come from a colleague. It carries on, I don't think it's very appropriate. Email comes from a domain that's probably a slight misspelling of your real domain, but you're already slightly panicked. the link appears to go to the company website. It's got HTTPS on it. Must be secure. Because, we've trained everyone to look for that. And so you click on it. And the next page you see is the normal login page that you see whenever you click on doing stuff for work. And so you log in and do the next thing. It's one of the reasons why, although we do a range of technical things in our job, we also always send phishing emails and other types of social engineering because they work. And it's the steps that go on after that's also interesting, but partly people are already on automatic pilot. So if you're doing targeted long-term persistence, frequently what happens after they've entered in credentials is that you move on and provide them the real website so that they don't realize anything weird has happened. The other things that happen is if they've got two-factor, there's an interesting disconnect that happens where people think that two-factor means more security, therefore they'll be safe against phishing, therefore I'm okay. I mean, two-factor doesn't help in this situation. Technically, if you're using UTF, it does help, but it's very unlikely you are. Most two-factor solutions aren't going to solve any problems. We're just going to relay on your request onto the original website. It's going to ask for the second factor, and whatever mechanism it does that, it might be it sends a text message, it might be you have to enter another token. We will then forward that onto the real site. Two factors improved it slightly in that we've only got access for that one time, but normally you can keep that session open for as long as you want, and the access you've got is more than sufficient to achieve things that someone senior in the company would not be happy with. Things that happened that I wouldn't have predicted before I started doing this is if you go a different way, if you're being slightly less subtle, and instead of redirect them onto the real website, you sit there and you go, I'm sorry, you got your password wrong. Please try again. Now, this is where you find out about targeting. If everyone in the entire company is using password managers, you're going to get a lot of confused people. If they're not, you'll get some people that will type the same password in again. You'll get a much smaller number of people that start getting really interesting. Some of them will start putting in every password they've ever entered to any site, anywhere, trying to find the right password for this site. And you get people that will respond. This is a small number of them, but they do it. They will respond to the original phishing email and say, I can't log in. Can you provide tech support? And I'm a very helpful person. And I'm quite happy to help in that situation. And by the time I've finished, their computer and network will have new features. And everyone likes features. Other things you see, the first hour. The first hour after you do that kind of attack, most of your responses are going to happen. So that's also relevant to you if you're doing instant response. If your instant response is kicking in after an hour, and there's several people received a phishing email, regardless of what they've told you, assume a large percentage of them have actually done it. So the drop-off is amazing. It's like 90% and then drop down, and then you get ones and twos. Now, the ones and twos are interesting in a different way, because they go on for a very, very long time. You can get them hours, days, months later. The months later are normally somebody was on holiday. This is particularly interesting with incident response. Normally, you can recognize the incident response occurred as the attacker because suddenly you stop getting the ones and twos. You can recognize how the incident response has occurred Because if they've blocked a URL to a site permanently, then you get no more clicks. If it all stops for a week and then it starts coming back, then a message was sent around everyone using Slack or email. And you start getting all the people that come on holiday, never saw this message, or if an email message was sent to everyone saying don't click on the email, then everyone clicks on the click anyway because that email is further down their email queue. Please don't do that as an instant response. It doesn't work very well for these kinds of things. Okay, let's give a different story. I like this one because it doesn't require any technical skill at all. Just someone sees an opportunity and goes for it. A company was going to get VC funding from another company, and so the VC company released a press release about the wonderful, wonderful funding that they're going to do soon. And an enterprising individual sent an email within an hour of this press release coming out, pretending to be the company corresponding with the VC, and made an educated guess about the conversation that must already be going on, and just appeared to be asking a question on an ongoing thread. They responded, and some back and forth occurred over a period of days. Amongst the back and forth, one of the emails that got sent by the scammer was to say, oh, by the way, when you get round to giving me the money, here are my bank account details. What's not to like? And the VC company then proceeds to pay the money into those bank account details. And then days later, they get a correspondence from the company, when are you going to give us the money? And both parties were upset, angry, and confused, and saying it was the other party's fault. Fault is always an interesting thing at these things. So that was interesting in that it was targeted, but the skill levels required were low. This, I would say, the skill levels are much lower, and the targeting was a sector. That was the extent of targeting. They sent an email to every VC company, as far as I can work out in the world, every VC company they could get the address for, they sent exactly the same email to all of them. And they rely on the fact that what's normal. And if you're in a VC company, you get emails like this all the time. Hi, I'd like you to give me all my money. I will explain why you should give me all your money. I just need a confidentiality agreement agreed. So there are people whose job is to open these emails and read these things. So all the training in the world is not going to help you in this situation because it's someone's job to do it. And the particular exploit was, in this case, it was a PDF document that exploited out-of-date PDF readers. And so they were doing a statistical game. They were just saying, someone out there's definitely got this. I just want a high probability that they will open it and that this person has cash. I know venture capital firms definitely have cash. The other thing that happens is that a lot of corporate networks are sort of like an egg. They're hardened on the outside and gooey in the middle. If you can get onto a computer somewhere inside the network, you can go to other places, talk to other things, do interesting things. Not always the case, but the vast majority of firms, it's true. So common threads that you see. These kinds of attacks are about abusing trust. They're trust in a colleague, trust in an organization, trust in a brand. That people can't spend all day looking really hard at things and thinking really hard for every action they do because that's not viable. If it looks close enough, it's good. And if you can match up the user you're sending it to what they expect, then you're on a winner. Something else you can do is just CCing people. So it's a completely different approach. You send emails between two different people. They're not in your company. They're not faking who they are. They just CC. And they appear to be talking about something that's a secret. People are curious. If that's a Word document, if that's a link, people will click on it to find out what the secret is. Microsoft is very generous about the features that they have provided in Microsoft Word. Arbitrary code as a feature is not a feature I want in my Word processing document, but apparently it's something they've added. They then decided that was not such a wise idea and added more and more buttons to say, OK, OK, OK. And then we found various ways to get around that, so it goes back down to one OK. And generally, if someone has to click OK to get their work done, they will click OK. You can do A/B testing on this stuff to improve your response rates. If you're impersonating a company, talking to an employee, and you say, must be actioned within 2 working days, you will get much higher hit rates. If you say, must be actioned in 1 day, you will get a large number of emails back complaining it's not enough time. If you say, it must be actioned within a week, lots of people will forget about it. And also, you're giving incident response time to do something. If you say it must be actioned within 2 working days, people think it's a reasonable period of time, and they do it immediately because they're afraid they'll forget about it. Yes. OK, targeting. So imagine you're in a situation where the thing that you need to do can only be done by 1 or 2 people. It's actually not as common as you think it would be. But if it does, then what you are doing is research, research, and more research. And some of the research is very basic. You're going onto Twitter, you're looking for blogs, you're looking for examples of emails from that company, finding out what normal looks like. You're trying to find org charts. Most companies are very good about publishing their org charts. Finding out what that person's interested in, not interested in, who they're going to obey if someone tells them to do something. Training will only get you so far. Some amount of training will improve things. But the big problems that occur are either that the training doesn't interest the people. One of the reasons why it doesn't interest the people is they know what phishing looks like. And only idiots fall for that, so that's not a problem. The other thing is that 5 to 10% of the people in most organizations will click on anything. You can get those numbers down a bit, but if I'm able to send it to a large number of people and make it remotely targeted, I'm playing a numbers game. I know someone's going to click on it. And so if your protection is based purely on all humans never making mistakes, then I think there's something wrong with your security model. The other thing is that time. We get to do long-term engagements. And because of that, we know you can do various things like, OK, great. Did that work? Did that not work? Does it matter? If I get to send 20 emails over a 6-month period, I need 1 person to make a mistake? Pretty good odds here, no matter what the response rates. Unfortunately, it tends to work out that if you can send 1 bunch of emails to a reasonable number of people, and a reasonable number of people is not many, 20, then you're definitely on a winner. If you need 1 person to do 1 thing, then as interesting things happen. You can start sending non-targeted email at the beginning. Because actually it's quite useful for management to know that people will click on non-targeted email. But another reason is it doesn't set off alarms. If they spot it, they think, great, that was spam. And I know how to spot spam. And so no incidents raised, which is great, because I get to do another one. Mobiles. Who here loves mobiles? Mobiles are great. I love mobiles. If you're targeting someone and you've worked out that they're using mobiles, many of the rules change. Previously, you were probably trying to target them during working hours. If you know that using mobiles to check their email, you probably want to do it out of working hours. You probably want to do it on a Friday night when alcohol might be involved. Emails on mobiles, you have less to see. Web browsing, you have less to see. It's harder to tell what the URL is. It's probably their focus is even smaller than normal. And when you drill down and do science into why people fall for these things, so the better ones, it's because someone was an automatic pilot. There are two ways that most people operate. They either do things bang, 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 or they stop and think about it. I generally don't want people to stop and think about it if they're doing an action they shouldn't be doing. And one of the ways of doing that is to make it familiar. It's the thing they're doing already. So habit, I clicked on the link, I logged into the page, I clicked on the link, it said, do you want to run macros? I have to click these all the time, so I do. You get, one of the things you should do if someone does fall for these things is A, don't get upset with that person, because humans make mistakes. But at the same time, do ask them why they fell for it. And ask them it as a series of questions, and you'll find that sometimes it's just that they don't understand the technology. Or they have an understanding of the technology, but it's not complete. Sometimes they didn't realize it's a problem. Most interesting answer was, I wanted to see what it would do. So employees will get the job done, and if you give them instructions that mean that they won't get the job done, they will ignore your instructions. And if you say don't click on links and emails, then you're in trouble, because they need to click on links and emails. And if their job is to open documents, they will open documents. And so your training cannot be, don't do your job. At which point, Andy is going to come running up onto the stage.
Hi, I'm Andy, Head of Engineering at Tessian. Thanks very much for that, Glyn. That was fascinating. I'm going to ask you a few questions from the audience. I think there's still time to submit if you've got any burning questions. So the first question is, I guess for Tradecraft, how much time do you put into an attack, to a phishing attack? Like how much time do you spend preparing?
It depends wildly, depending on who it is. I think absolute minimum time would be a day. And it can be up to a week if there's a highly specialized circumstances where we've worked out that the high probability is this way and everything else is not going to work. But it's normally quite surprising to people how little effort it takes to find out information that people don't know. Right. They think that people would not be able to find out this information, therefore if someone has this information, they must be on the inside and therefore can be trusted. So it can take, like I say, it's a range, and it depends on how hard the target is. And
what if someone sat in the audience wants to know how they can take it from a day to a week? What could they do?
So the best advice I can give is go to the most senior person in senior management you can get your hands on. Ask them, what do you want to have not happen? What is the bad outcome? Which is, I hope most people have asked that question, but if you haven't, please ask that question. And then work out what the simplest route is to that. Okay. And so the details that are related to that simplest route will get you there. Some of it, though, you find is it's information that you have to release. And so sometimes it's just about training people and having processes in place so that warnings come up in place if you can.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, next question. Are there any times of the day that people are more likely to fall for a phishing attack?
Yes, no, and maybe. I think everyone in the room's heard this one. It depends. Ask them any techie, any question, and if they're any good, the question or answer is it depends. You get different people at different times of the day, different days of the week. If you send a phishing email in on a Monday and you send it to 20 people, you might get 3 people from untargeted that will respond to it. If you send it on a Friday, you'll get a different 3 people. Right. And this is always something you have to explain to companies of like, no, please don't go telling off 2 people because they clicked on the thing or they did the thing. It's more, no, you have a training problem, no, you have to have a technical solution to this problem, rather than these 2 people are the people that caused the problem. There is the case that if someone is repeatedly falling for it, then that's a slightly different situation. But
So we basically just have to be vigilant all the time, is your answer. Okay, next question. This is an interesting one. I've heard many times that attackers use social engineering to attack a target. Have you any thoughts on how we could leverage social engineering to keep our data more secure? So I guess like to turn it around.
Yes and no. So I think just purely doing phishing to improve people is a bit like hitting them with a hammer repeatedly and expecting them to get better at it. I mean, that's not always a good approach. However, the social in there is that you're engineering management. You're trying to explain to someone senior that this is a problem, and the solution is not, oh, they'll just be smart, and I have smart employees and they don't make mistakes. There are ways that you can motivate people. I mean, there's the Pavlovian effects that work remarkably well. You'll find that nearly in any company, there's a few chocoholics. In fact, there's quite a lot of chocoholics. And if you need to get more visibility on attacks, simply informing people that you will give them a Malteser if they come and tell you, or if they email you something that looks suspicious, you will very rapidly discover who the chocoholics are in that organization. However, if a large-scale attack goes, these are the first people that get in contact with you. The interesting thing on this is that you can't, at the beginning of the process, even if you think the thing that they sent you was stupid, it's not. It might have a training problem, but if the thing that they send you is stupid, then give them a chocolate. Do it again. Do it again. At the point when they're absolutely obviously trying to milk you for chocolate, then you might need to change it. But Pavlovian effects work.
Would you ever advise a security team to like engage in a phishing attack if they detected one?
Oh, like, attacking back.
Yeah.
99.9% of the time, I would say no.
Okay.
I would also say consult your lawyers before doing anything. Committing a crime because someone committed a crime is not a good approach.
Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, my iPad's turned up.
I'm sure I can come up with an exception if you give me the right situation. Responding back sometimes, once again, if you've been breached, then responding may become something you would think about. But if you've not been breached, I would really hesitate to do any kind of feedback to them.
Okay, yeah, that seems like a sensible thing to me. Okay, next question. Who are the people in an organization most likely to fall for a phishing attack?
Everyone. The easier answer is who are the people least likely to fall for a phishing attack? Female middle management. Apart from that, everybody. The type of phishing attack varies, though. I mean, if you're dealing with technical people, you do something different than if you're dealing with non-technical people.
Yeah. You're not giving us any quick wins here to fight phishing.
This is a hard problem.
Okay, this is a slightly different question. Who do you think is responsible for phishing attacks? Like, generally, is it individuals or criminal groups?
Yes. There are certain groups that do have long-term models where they've been doing the same attack forever and it works. There are, so for 419 scams are quite frequently done by individuals. For targeted non-technical attacks, often done by individuals. Long-term technical that then involve also pivoting around networks are normally done by more than one person. But once again, it varies, but we've seen quite frequently that those are done by groups. Phishing as a vector is done by just about everybody. Right. Because there are a range of ways of getting into an organization, and this happens to be one of them. It's just a very effective way. So you do the thing that works, and so it's one of the ways that works.
Yeah, makes sense. Oh, response to a previous answer. Why are female middle management less likely to respond?
I have no idea. I have the numbers on this to prove it. I don't know.
Okay.
I know the science tells me it to be true, and I know that other people have reproduced that.
Fascinating.
I'm sure there's a PhD research project available for someone to go and do it. It's actually not required for me to know it, just that I know that it occurs.
Okay, yeah, that seems fair. Okay, so the next question is, how many of the examples given today in your previous talk could have or should have been prevented by technology?
God, what an impossible question. So how many of the examples given today could have been prevented by technology? Probably all but one could have easily been prevented by technology. And the one that would have been difficult to prevent by technology would be two people who are not in the organization CCing you. Because even if you got a warning that said, hi, you've never corresponded with these two people, you'd be like, yeah, I know. Isn't it cool? I've got the secret now. Some are just inherently hard for technology to solve. The classic ones being, there's a link in an email. How do you know if a link in an email is evil or not? Because it's transient. It might be at the point when an appliance checks it that it's safe. And then 15 seconds later, because we've seen the appliance have checked it, we switch it.
Okay, cool. I think that is all the time we have, but thank you very much for your time, Glyn. Thanks a lot.